All right, so we're going to be talking about um, heredity. All right. So this is all. This is about So this is basically kind of like a continuation of what we talked about last time, right? So last time we talked about the different types of um, about how Mendel used like the pea plants in order to explore like kind of like the basics of genetics, right? And kind of figure out that you have two different chromosomes and this kind of thing. So all right, so we're going to talk about heredity patterns, right? All right. So take a look at this, right? So let's suppose you flip a coin, right? All right. So honest, let's suppose you flip a coin 2 times. What are the different kinds of possibilities that you could get when you flip that coin?
It can get heads or tails.
Heads or tails, right? So that's for the first time, right? You could get heads, uh, the first time, and tails the second time, right? Yusuf, what are some other possibilities? All right,
Can you
Yusuf,
hear me,
Yusuf,
brother?
right? Right. So you could get like
Brother.
maybe heads the first time, tails the
Mm-hmm.
second time, right? What else?
Yeah.
What else could you
Uh,
get?
you could get heads or heads, or
You get
tails or
head,
tails,
hmm and tails first, and then heads later, right?
and then heads
Right.
second. Yeah.
So each of those different possibilities, right, has like basically like a 25% chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you flip a coin, right? If you flip a coin, right, you could get heads or tails. The first one, heads or tails. Second one, heads or tails, right? Each of those probabilities is 50%, right? If you flip a coin, there's basically like a half chance, 50% chance that you could get heads, 50% chance that you could get tails, right? So the probability is exactly whatever are the different possibilities, right? Out of 100%, you divide it into that many equal portions, right? So it's not that if you flip it, 75% of the time it's going to be heads, and 25% of the time it's going to be tails, something like that, right? Right. So whatever the different choices, they're distributed like basically equally, right? So in genetics, it's kind of a similar kind of idea, right? So first of all, let's talk about a couple of terms before we get to the probabilities, right? So we have these terms. So when let's take a look at these different pea plants, right? So we have these plants, and each of them, right, has how many chromosomes at each chromosome number? All right, so I'm asking how many chromosomes at each chromosome number does a plant or animal usually have? No, how many chromosomes at each chromosome number? Two, right? At each number, whether it's number 7, number 10, number 3, right? There's two there, right? One from the mother, one from the father, right? So every gene, right? Every gene, every kind of protein or whatever that's made, right? There's two different possibilities, right? Or there's two different varieties there, right? So one comes from the mother and one comes from the father, right? So they could be different varieties. Like for example, let's suppose we're talking about color, right? The color of the flower. So the color of the flower maybe is either red or white. Maybe those are the two different possibilities, right? So from the mother, you could have gotten, the plant could have gotten red or white flowers. From the father, red or white flowers, something like that, right? So in each, at each, you know, so each of those different possibilities is called an allele, all right? So let's suppose both alleles are the same. Let's suppose from the mother and the father, the plant got both red plants, both red alleles, right? So if both are the same, right? If both are red or both are white, that's called homozygous, right? So that's the first term. You see here in the circle, right? See the letters, right? Capital versus lowercase, they
So
denote
that's
different
called the
kinds of.
homozygous gene, right? Homozygous gene.
No,
Is it
so
like a
you see
homozygous thing?
homozygous alleles, right?
Homozygous allele.
Right. You see that. So these different possibilities for the genes are called alleles. So capital P is one kind of allele. Lowercase p is another kind of allele. Right? Allele. Allele. So like I was saying, those are the different varieties of the genes on the chromosome. So for example, let's suppose, on the chromosome, right, each part of the chromosome represents the same thing, right? Like if you go to the very top of a certain chromosome number, maybe it codes for flower color, right? So one of those chromosomes, right, came from the mother and one came from the father, right? So the one from the mother, let's say, has a red allele. Okay. The one from the father, let's say, is also red allele. Right. So both are red, right? They're both coding for making the flower red, right? So if that's the case, then this is called homozygous. They both have the same variety of the allele. So alleles can come in different varieties in a population. Let's say you have a whole bunch of flowers or a whole bunch of animals or whatever. Each allele could be different, could be of a different variety. Right? Like, for example, flower color could be red or white. Right? So if both are red, from both the mother and father are red, that's called homozygous red. If both are white, homozygous white. So you notice in each of these circles in the first part, right? Let's say capital P stands for a certain allele, and lowercase p stands for a certain allele, right? So homozygous would mean if both alleles are the same type, like capital P, or lowercase p. But what if, for example, the alleles were different, right? From the mother, right? The plant got one kind of allele, but from the father, they got a different kind of allele, right? So, like for example, for flower color, let's suppose from one parent, the plant received the red allele to make its flowers red. Now, from the other parent, the plant received the white allele to make the flowers white, right? So one red and one white. So those are two different alleles, right? Those are two different variations of the same allele, right? So if it's different, that's called heterozygous, right? So
Wait,
notice
brother,
here,
you mean there are two different alleles, right? Because each one of them is an allele.
right? Well, right, two different types of alleles.
Well, they're two different alleles, right? Though, like they're not like
Right.
the same one allele.
Right, correct. So every plant has two different alleles. But I'm saying on the right, heterozygous, the varieties are the same, are different. Over here on the left, you still have two alleles,
I see, brother.
but the variety is the same. Okay. All right. So for every single gene, okay, there's always two copies, right? From each parent. Okay, so there's always two copies. So so the difference is not the number of copies. The difference is whether the copies are the same or different. Right?
Yeah, like one codes for white, one codes for red, for
Right.
flower color. I get it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So these are just the names that you have to know. All right. All right. So we talked about this. All right. Now, there's two other terms also. One is called phenotype, and one is called genotype. All right. So genotype is like what is in the DNA. Right. It's like basically like what varieties of alleles are inside your DNA. Right. Now, the phenotype is what appears on the outside, like what manifests in the creature or the plant. So just because an animal or plant has a certain kind of DNA doesn't mean that DNA, actually produces something that shows up in the animal's characteristics. So for example, let's suppose a plant has
Does that mean like a personality trait
wait,
counts too? Like,
yeah, it could count for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, personality, physical traits, anything like that. So let's suppose a plant has. So last time we talked about dominant versus recessive alleles. All right. So Freya, what does that mean? Dominant versus recessive. All right. Anas, what is the difference between dominant and recessive alleles?
The dominant one is a capital letter, and the recessive one would be a lowercase letter.
All right. So dominant is usually a capital letter, recessive, lowercase letter. All right. What else, Yusuf?
What happened, brother?
So what's the difference between dominant and recessive allele?
Oh, dominant and recessive. Dominant is like the trait that like overpowers, or is like the trait that shows, and the recessive trait is like the one that's there, but like it doesn't show. It's not
Right.
one
So
of the alleles, but it doesn't show.
right. So for example, so let's take a look at this. This picture over here, right? So let's first look at the genotype. Let's look over here on the right. Let's just focus on the genotypes. So this right here, this is basically like what's in the DNA. Okay. So for example, there's different varieties, right? So you see the capital letter and the lowercase letter, right? So you all remember we always have two different alleles, right? One from the mother, one from the father, from the two parents. So for example, this plant received two capital P's at the top, right? One from one parent, the other capital P from the other parent. So both of these are dominant alleles, right? Now this one over here received one capital P, one lowercase p, right? So would you say, Freya, that these two plants here, do they have the same genotype or different genotypes? Different, and why? Right, so in the DNA, it's a little bit different, right? They both have one capital P, but the second allele is different. This one has two capital P's. This one has one capital P, one lowercase p, right? So you see how the genotype in the DNA is different, right? But the phenotype is what you actually see on the outside. So Yusuf, do these have the same phenotypes or different phenotypes?
I'm still confused about phenotype and genotype, brother. Phenotype is the trait that can be seen,
No,
right?
with a G, genotype is what's inside. You can't see it.
Yeah. I'm saying phenotype though
is what it manifests on the outside.
The trait, the existing trait that you can see on the outside.
That you can see, right?
Okay, and genotype
is you have
it's
to go
a
into
trait and it's present, but you can't see it, or it's a trait, but it's not. It's like an allele where it's like recessive.
Right. It's an allele. So this is in the so you wouldn't call this a trait. These are alleles in the DNA that you can't see.
So how would you put it into words? Like, what is a genotype?
So genotype is basically, what the DNA says, right?
What the DNA? Okay, I see.
Okay. Phenotype is what you.
The genetic makeup of a trait.
Yeah, right.
The genetic makeup of a trait.
Genetic makeup of a trait, and then phenotype is the actual trait itself, what you actually see or observe on the outside. Okay, so both of these are purple. Okay, so how is it, Yusuf, that in the DNA you have that these are different, but on the outside they look the same? How is that possible?
Because the purple, the capital PLL allele, it represents purple. So since it's dominant, on the two dominant ones, it's obviously going to be purple, and the other one is dominant and recessive, and dominant is always the one that shows. That's why it's purple.
So, remember we talked about dominant versus recessive last time, right? So the dominant allele here is a capital P, right? Capital, they usually, the dominant allele, they usually write it as capital P. So the capital P's, right, are the dominant traits, right? So if you have one dominant trait, one dominant allele, that's enough to have that dominant trait. It doesn't matter if the other one is lowercase p. The capital P always wins. So In the second one, you have capital P, lowercase p. So the capital P wins, and it's going to be purple. So both of these are going to be purple. So you notice how they have different genotypes, these two, but they have the same phenotype, right? Different genotypes, meaning down in the DNA, it's different. But what manifests on the outside, what color the flower is exactly the same. Okay. Now, let's go over here. So, Anas, tell me about this one over here. What does this mean? Lowercase p, homozygous. Tell me about this third one over here. What do you know about this one?
It doesn't, because there's no dominance trait. They're both like recessive. It's gonna stay white.
Right. So these are both recessive, right? Both lowercase p, lowercase p. What does this mean, homozygous?
I don't know, brother.
So we were talking about on the previous slide, right? Heterozygous versus homozygous. So look, this one says homozygous,
Yes.
then heterozygous, then homozygous. So what do you think these words mean?
Oh, if they have the same trait,
Right. So they have the
like
same,
the
right?
same letters.
Same letters, homozygous. Different letters, heterozygous. Right?
Okay.
So you say this is homozygous white or homozygous recessive, something like this, right? And so obviously this is both lowercase p, gonna be white, right?
Okay.
So this is how the idea here. Here's the main idea. The idea here is that the genotype, right? You could have different genotypes, but the same phenotype, right? So the phenotype comes from the genotype, but it doesn't mean just that, the same, that to get this phenotype, you have to always have the same genotype, right? You have different genotypes here, but they end up in the same manifestation, the same phenotype, right? All right, so we went over the Punnett squares a little bit, last time, all right? But so we're gonna go in a little bit more detail here today. All right. So Freya, do you remember, like, can you explain to me, like, what's going on in this Punnett square? Do you remember, like, what we talked about here? Remember? All right, Yusuf, do you remember what's going on here?
Yes, but they're checking, like, it's like basically the ratio of dominant traits to recessive traits, like it's comparing the alleles basically.
So how do they get this table? Where do they get all this stuff from the table?
Basically it's like one trait, and then they have like a dominant allele, recessive allele, like red and white, for example,
Right.
or red and blue,
So
and then they see, like the probability for each thing.
So they drew this square with 4 internal squares, right? Right. And at the top, right, there's basically like 2 places to put letters, right? So you have the red letters here, and then you have the blue letters here, right? So where did these letters come from, Anas? You see these red letters up here? Why did they put some red letters here and some blue letters over here? Where did these come from?
So they can get like all the combinations.
No, but where did these letters come from?
The one on top is the fathers, and the one on the side is the mothers.
Right. So these are from the parents, right? So let's say the red, let's say is the father's genotype, right? So the father, let's say for whatever I don't know what S stands for, what is flower color or whatever it is, right? But whatever it is, there's one dominant, right? One capital S, and the father has one lowercase s, right? And then the mother.
But why is it? Yeah, why is it like that? Why is there one capital? I thought there was only 2 alleles for each thing.
Right. So there are only 2 alleles, but right, there's 1, 2 on the top from the father, 1, 2 on top on the mother from the mother.
Exactly, that's 4 alleles in total.
No. So these are in different creatures, though, right? This is not all in the same being. Right. So these ones on the top, this is the father's alleles. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's only 2 in here.
Oh, okay. The alleles from the father's trait, 2 of them, and then alleles from the mother's trait.
So this right here is the mother's. Okay. So these are separate creatures. This is not all in the same creature. There's not 4 alleles in the same creature.
So I thought that the parent only brings like the one trait that they have. Like, for example, if they have dominant as red or something like that, then they're only gonna bring that.
Notice you see each of these squares. So what's happening in each of these squares is that each parent is only giving one of its alleles to each square, right? So here's what's happening. Like, for example, during during meiosis, right? Remember,
Mm-hmm.
during meiosis, right, the
Mm-hmm.
gametes are formed, right? So each
Yeah.
gamete randomly gets one of these two. The gamete, right, in
Mm-hmm.
meiosis, right, you don't get both of these chromosomes, capital S and lowercase s. It randomly,
Mm-hmm.
right, just like you flip a coin, 50%, 50%,
Mm-hmm.
randomly could get either the capital S or the lowercase s to go into the gametes. Okay? And then over here in the blue, same thing for this other parent. Randomly, you're going to pick either the capital S or the lowercase s. Okay?
Oh,
So
all
when they
right.
combine, look at inside the table. These are the different possibilities when they combine. So for example,
Yeah.
let's suppose the gamete from the top gets a capital S. And
Mm-hmm.
let's suppose the gamete from this parent gets a capital S. Together that child is going to have capital S, capital S. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, suppose instead of this capital S, 50% chance of getting the lowercase s. So lowercase s plus 50% chance of getting capital S from this parent gives you what? Capital S, lowercase s. You see the colors, right? The
Yes.
blue and the red. Okay. So same thing. That's how they made these squares. So these four are the different possibilities for what the child could have.
So for any gene, brother, the recessive trait always has 75%. I mean, 25% possibility of occurring. Its dominant trait always
Right.
has 75%, right?
Assuming that assuming that the parents are one dominant, one recessive.
uh, like the one parent gives a dominant trait, the other parent gives a recessive trait. Is what you're saying?
No, you see, each parent has one dominant, one recessive, right?
Oh, each parent
Right.
is heterogeneous.
Is
Hold
heterozygous,
up.
right? Right. So
Heterozygous.
each
Yes,
parent
brother. What are
has.
you saying?
So if so it's not always 25% recessive. It's based on our calculation here in the square. So each cross you have to do separately. So it's not just that in any cross with any kind of combination of parents' alleles that you're always going to have 75% dominant, 25% recessive.
How, brother? Because you're always gonna have a
Okay.
dominant trait.
All right. So here's what so, no. So if the parent, this is assuming that the parent has a dominant trait. Okay. All
Oh,
right.
so they don't necessarily have a dominant trait?
No, the parent could be anything, right? This is assuming that this parent has a capital S and a lowercase s. What if this parent has both the lowercase s's?
Oh, okay. I see what is going on right now. All right. So if the parent had both like a recessive trait, basically, it would have two lowercase s's, right?
Right. So that parent could only give lowercase s's.
Oh, okay, brother. I see.
Right.
I see what's happening now. I was
So
confused
we're
about
gonna
that,
do
brother.
some practice problems with this. All right. So
Okay.
these letters over here at the top, right? In the red, right? This doesn't mean that the mother always has a capital S and a lowercase s, right? This is just one possibility for this parent, right? Maybe this parent has had both capital S's, right? In that case, our square would be different, right? It would only be giving capital S's. Or what if both of these were lowercase s's? Then it would always be giving only lowercase s's. All right. All right. So let's look at some example. All right. So this is showing. Wait, what is this? Okay. Yeah, that's just an explanation. All right. So let's go over here to this one, or this picture over here. Right. So in this picture, right, here's what they're saying. This parent over here, in the white, this is one parent. All right. So Freya, tell me about this parent. Is this parent homozygous or heterozygous? And why do you say heterozygous? Right. So these are both this is both the lowercase p, right? This parent in the white has lowercase p, lowercase p. So is that same or different? Same, right? So same is homozygous, right? Same as homozygous. So this parent, right, in the square can only contribute lowercase p's, right? Right? In these, right, in this row, in the top row, it's only going to be given lowercase p's. In the bottom row, it's only going to be giving the lowercase p, right? Now this parent at the top, we know this one has a capital P, right? You see that? So we know that this one over here has a capital P. Now, we don't know what this one is right now. Like let's suppose we don't know its genotype. We don't know what's in the DNA. So we know that it's going to be capital P because it's purple. So there's got to be at least one of those dominant alleles in there, right? But we don't know if this other one with the question mark is also a capital P or a lowercase p, right? So this is saying that in the first column, this parent is going to be given the capital P, capital P. In the second column, we don't know what it's going to give, so there's different possibilities here. All right. All right. Let's go to the problem. So I'm going to give you guys 1 minute. I want you guys. So on your paper, I want you guys to try problem number 1. So on your paper, I want you guys to try this problem. So let's try problem number 1 first. So make the Punnett square and see what you can figure out.
Wait, brother, what is a monohybrid?
All right. So I want you to, try it first, and then we'll talk about it.
Oh wait, so you didn't explain what monohybrid yet? Huh, brother?
No, I want you to read it and try it first, and then we're going to go over the answer.
All right.
Brother, I don't get what to do. Brother.
A, make a Punnett square and then just basically put the two alleles, like there's two capital T's, and put them on one side, and then the lowercase t's put them on the other side, or whatever the combination is.
Oh, so we
And then
have to make
compare.
a Punnett square
Yeah,
for
exactly. For
each
each thing.
question.
Yeah, for each
So,
one.
so,
So,
so try the first one first.
predict the probability.
Just do the first question first.
Okay. Let me.
All right, so let's take a look at this, right? So it says that so one of the parents is capital T, right? And the other
Yes.
parent is lowercase t, right? So who wants to tell us what are the different possibilities
Brother,
for the daughter plants?
brother, it's literally all just capital T, lowercase t, so just 100% probability of being dominant.
And so free, what do you get? All right. So let's take a look at this one, right? You see the first square, square. So see the parent at the top, the first parent has capital T, right? And this parent here has a lowercase t, right? So if we randomly pick one from the top and randomly from the bottom, or from the side, these are the different possibilities, right? The top is only going to be giving capital T's. And then this parent is only going to be giving lowercase t, so they're all basically capital T, lowercase t, right? They all look like the same, right? So in the first, this what this means is that in this first generation, they're all going to be basically exactly the same in terms of their genes. All right, they're all going to be exactly the same. There's no other possibility except for these four right over here. Right now, in the second generation, here's what they mean. They're taking two creatures from this or two plants from this generation and combining them together. Right. So these plants have capital T, lowercase t. So if you take two of those, then we go to this square on the right. You see that? Capital T, lowercase t over here. Capital T, lowercase t. Right? Right. So Anas, explain to me how did they get this one? How did they get this these combinations over here?
They just like took one from the top and one from the side. Like in the first column, it first took one from the. It only took the capital T from the top and it just paired it with the ones on the side. And on
Right.
the second one, they did the same thing.
Right. So over here we get like the capital T goes over here, and the lowercase t. So basically, kind of like where they
Yeah.
intersect, right? That's what it's going to
Yes.
be. All right. All right. Good. All right. Let's try the second problem. All right. So I'm gonna give you guys another minute. Try problem number 2.
Done, brother.
Okay. All right. So all right. So Yusuf. All right. So what does this mean? A heterozygous black-eyed mouse and homozygous recessive red-eyed mouse. So what are going to be? So, and they're saying use B, right? Capital B, lowercase b for this one. All right. So just wait.
Header,
Hold on a second. Just give me the first one. So heterozygous black-eyed mouse. How what using what letters are you going to represent its
capital B and lowercase b,
capital B, lowercase b, and why?
because he's heterozygous, and since uh yeah, since he's heterozygous, and it says dominant too, right?
Right.
Oh no, it didn't. It
No, no,
doesn't say
just
dominant, but
no, yeah.
you could assume that, right? And so it'd be one capital B and one lowercase b because dominant
Right.
always goes over recessive. So
Right. So it's saying heterozygous, right? So we have capital B, lowercase b. All right.
right.
Now Fariha. Then the second one says homozygous recessive red-eyed female mouse. So this one is going to have hmm? Lowercase b's, right? Right. So let's take a look at what that's going to give us, right? So on the top, right, we have capital B, lowercase b, and then on the side, lowercase b, right? So when we combine them, we get these different kinds of possibilities, right? So Anas, this mouse over here, what is
Yes.
going to be its phenotype?
Red eye.
Red
No,
eye.
it's gonna be the black eye
And why?
because it has a dominant trait.
Right. So this is there's at least one dominant one, right? So the
Yeah.
dominant is automatically going to win out, right? So this one is
Yes.
going to be black. All right. Freehead. This one over here. What is this one going to be over here? Is it going to be black or red? Freehead, do you see this one here? Oh, Freeha, are you there? All right. So red-eyed, right? Because these are both recessive, right? So there's nothing dominant. The black dominant trait is not there. So now the red recessive trait can show up. All right. All right. Good. All right. Let's do the third one. I'll give you guys 1 minute. All right. So Anas, what do you get for this one? So it says, all right. So if one parent is homozygous dominant for free earlobes, all right. So what is going to be um, its
It's
genome?
gonna be 100% for earlobes because every single pair is gonna be the dominant trait and a recessive trait. It'll be capital F and a lowercase f.
All right. So capital F, lowercase f is going to be, all right. So they told us one parent was homozygous dominant, right? So capital F, capital F. So you can see, therefore, in every column, that's going to give you the capital F, right?
Yeah.
So that means all of these are going to have at least one capital F. That means that all of these are going to be dominant, right? None of the recessives are going to show through.
Yes.
Right. All right. So now let's take a look, right? So there we're talking about, basically just like one kind of, trait, right? Like whether we're talking about, flower color, eye color, earlobes, whatever it is, right? We're just looking at basically like one trait at a time, right? Right. So now if we're looking at two different traits, right? Let's say, two different, traits, right? So does so every parent sort of we talked about probability, right? Like let's suppose a parent has a capital B lowercase b, right? So the probability of the gamete getting one of those is like 50%, right? It's not weighted in favor of one or the other, right? You just perfectly half 50%, 50%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's suppose we're talking about now obviously in a chromosome, right? In a whole genome, there's tons and tons and tons of different traits, right? There's like in a plant, there's the color, the height, the number of peas in the pod, all kinds of different random things, right? So let's suppose that a plant has is heterozygous for something. Let's say it's it has capital B, lowercase b. So let's suppose that the capital B is given to the gamete. Does that tell you anything about the other alleles that are going to be going into that gamete? Right? So okay, let's look at an example. Let's just look at an example.
Wait,
Right.
brother, hold up. I'm still confused about independent assortment. Brother.
Okay, yeah. So we're gonna do that with the example. This example can tell us about it. All right.
All right.
So let's talk about two different traits, right? So we've been talking about just like one trait at a time, right? Like flower color, seed color, whatever it is, right? So let's look at
Yes.
two traits. So one trait, let's say, is about seed shape. Okay. Right. Let's say the R is about seed shape, like capital R, lowercase r, whatever it is, right? And let's say another trait is about seed color, right? Like capital Y, lowercase y, something like that. Right? So you have capital R, lowercase r, and then capital Y, lowercase y, something like that. Right? So let's say so from capital R, lowercase r, right? Let's say the plant has capital R, lowercase r. There's a 50% chance of getting either one of those, right? Now for the other one,
Yeah.
capital Y, lowercase y, right? There's a 50% chance of getting either one of these, right? But
Yes.
let's take a look at this one, right? Let's suppose we know that over here the capital R was chosen, right? There's a 50% chance of each, right? But let's suppose we know that, okay, from that, the capital R was chosen, right?
Okay.
Just randomly by 50% chance, right? Capital R was chosen. Now, does that affect which one of these is going to be chosen, capital Y or lowercase y?
No, brother. No.
No, right? So it doesn't mean that, like down here, right? Usually it's like 50%, 50% chance, right? Exactly half and half. But let's suppose we pick the capital R, right? It doesn't mean that because I picked capital R, that therefore now it's like more probable that the capital Y is going to be chosen. All right? It means that basically, these two are, chosen independently,
Unrelated.
unrelated,
Like they're not chosen like
based on each
according
other.
to what the other one is chosen, basically.
Right. Good, right? So
That's what independent assortment is.
correct, right? So let's give another example, right? Let's suppose I'm flipping two coins, right? So I flip a coin, right? And I see what it is, heads or tails, right? And then I take the coin and I flip it again, right? So let's suppose, let me ask you a question. The second coin flip, right? The second time I flip it and I get a heads or a tails, right? Does what I get in that second coin flip, heads or tails, depend or change based on what I got in my first coin flip?
No, brother.
No, right?
No.
Right. It's like if I got heads in the first time I flipped it, it doesn't tell me anything about what I'm gonna get the second time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So that's the same idea over here. Whatever I choose in this trait, capital R, lowercase r, whatever, it doesn't have anything to do with what I choose over here, capital Y or lowercase y. These are chosen independently of each other, right? So let's suppose we want to do, so in the previous one, right, we were doing what was called monohybrid cross. That means that we're just looking at like one allele at a time, right? Like capital B, lowercase b, that's it. There's like one letter, right? In this case, we have two different types of letters, right? R and Y, right? Capital or lowercase, right? Of R or Y. But so now we're going to do what's called a dihybrid cross, right? So here's what we do, right? Let's say both parents are, this capital R, lowercase r, and capital Y, lowercase y. So here's what we do. From the left, right, we could pick either capital R or lowercase r. And those could be paired with either capital Y or lowercase y. So these are the different possibilities that could go into one of the gametes, right? From here, you could pick a capital R and a capital Y. You could pick the capital R, but in this, you could pick, for the next one, you could pick the capital R from the left, but with it, now you pick the lowercase y. Does that make sense? Right.
Why are we picking different? Are these different what's it called?
Right.
Allele or like different traits?
Right. So this is a different kind of thing. It's called dihybrid cross.
Yeah, but doesn't that mean it would show four allele? Okay, it's just showing like the trait that's there. All right, I see it.
All right. So
So the
the
bottom one basically, RY is basically the same thing as RRYY, right?
No. So here. So okay. So these you see this column in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is showing what's going to be given to the gamete. Remember, the gamete only gets half of the chromosomes. It's not getting all the chromosomes. So this is not R R Y Y. This is just R and Y. Here's what's happening, right? So the parent plant, okay, you see these boxes? Both boxes are for the same parent plant. These are not different parents. Okay? So the parent has a capital R, lowercase r at this allele, and at this trait it has capital Y, lowercase y. Okay? So these are like different locations on the chromosomes. Okay? So into the gamete, from the left, right, the parent could pick either the capital R or the lowercase r. At this location, it could pick either the capital Y or the lowercase y. So kind of looking at it together, these are the different possibilities.
So this one allele basically
Hold on,
determines
hold on,
two traits.
hold on a second. So these are the possibilities for what could go into one gamete. Right. So we're looking at two alleles or two types of traits at the same time.
You mean one allele?
So
Because I'm saying like this
sorry.
is one allele, right? Because one parent produces one allele.
Right. So at each location. Right. Remember on a chromosome, right? There's not just one allele, right? There's like millions and millions of different types of genes.
Yeah, but the allele that the parent passes on to the child is just one.
Correct. Right. So
Like
that's
each
why,
parent passes on to one allele.
That's why you see from the two R's, capital R, lowercase r, we're only picking one to go into the center. From the two Y's,
but when these both combine, basically it produces one allele, right? That is passed on to the child.
no, it's not one allele. You see, each letter is an allele, right? So in this gamete, all right. So it's like this. So you see this on the left, you have capital R, lowercase r. Okay. Let's say this is on chromosome number 5. Okay. Right. So from the mother, right? So and there's 2 chromosomes, right? That's why we have 2 letters here. Chromosome 5, that we have, every person has 2 copies, one from the mother, one from the father. Right. So this person has a capital R and a lowercase r. Okay. Now to put into the gamete for the next generation, you could only pick one of these, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you could pick either the capital R or the lowercase r and send it into the gametes. So these in the middle, this column in the middle, these are the possible gametes from meiosis, right? You got to remember meiosis.
Yeah.
Right?
But still.
Hold on a second. So now you see the Y's, these are completely different. Did you see the Y's? Okay, this is let's say this is a completely different chromosome number. Let's say this is chromosome 10 now. Okay, so it's not that R and Y are at the same location. These are in completely different locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
But these two, so basically these 2 alleles determine 2 traits, though, right?
Right. These are 2 separate traits. R and Y are 2 separate traits.
But they're 2 alleles determining them, right?
What do you mean 2 alleles? For each one you have 2 alleles, 2 R's, 2 Y's.
Yeah, for each one you have 2.
Right.
No, I mean like look, you have these combinations RY, you know, like these different
Right. So R and Y are not acting together. So this is like let's say R codes for flower color, and let's say Y codes for
Yeah, I know that, but
plant
I'm just
height.
saying like this is 2 alleles that are like sent to the child, right?
Correct.
But they're not sent as RR or YY, right? It's just sent as RY.
Right. Correct, because you could only pick one R and one Y to send to the child.
But it's because this is the 2 alleles from one parent, and then you got 2 alleles from another parent.
Right. So there's gonna be another parent somewhere else that we have to combine these
That
gametes
still doesn't
with.
make. I don't know. That doesn't make sense yet.
All right, so
I guess
these are each gametes, right? You see in the center, these are gametes.
Yeah, these are gametes.
Right. So this is not a complete plant now. You have to combine it with another gamete from somewhere else to form.
Yeah, but then isn't it possible that only determine one trait then? Like it's possible. If, for example, if this thing chose RY, right, the lowercase recessive R and Y,
right,
and the other parent had a dominant R and a recessive Y. I'm just giving an example, right?
Right.
You make a Punnett square, so then the final square would have Y and Y.
No, okay. So the Punnett square is not going to look like that. We're going to look at what the Punnett square looks like.
Okay. See, yeah, okay, that makes sense, Marshall.
Okay. So this right here, this whole picture here is just showing one parent, right?
Oh. Yeah.
And we're looking at 2 completely different chromosome locations. One has the R's, and one has the Y's. Okay. So this parent, right, at each location can only select one thing to give to the gamete. So it can only pick one of these R's, and then it can only pick one of these Y's. So in the gamete, in the cell, the meiosis cell that goes to the child, that's going to combine with another gamete from somewhere else. Okay. these are the different possibilities of these alleles that are going to be in there, right? Capital R, capital Y, right? You could pick the capital R, capital Y, capital R, lowercase y. With the capital R, you could instead pick the lowercase y. Lowercase r, capital Y. Lowercase r, lowercase y, right? These are the different possibilities for the gametes, okay? Now, they have to combine with the gamete from somewhere else. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. So you see over here, you see those combinations that we made. Those 4 combinations are from one parent just at the top, right? Now, those gametes, they could combine with gametes from another parent on the side.
But why all 4? I thought only one gamete is chosen from these, right?
Right. No, but these are the different possibilities, right? So it's not like all 16 of these are actually going to form. These are giving you the different possibilities. And so
at the end,
brother,
in the end you'll have 4 different alleles.
Yeah, you could say
right?
that. Right, 2 for the R's,
You
2
have
for
like
the Y's.
RY, RY, RY,
Correct.
RY, whatever.
Correct. So when we fill this out, it's going to look like this.
Yeah.
Right? So in this case, you're doing the same thing. You're just combining all of them, right? Like at this location, right? We have 2 capital R's and 2 lowercase y's, right? From the top, from the column and the row, we combine them and write down what they get from the top parent and from the side parent. So you see there's 16 different combinations here, right? So it doesn't mean that there are going to be 16 children. This means that these are the different possibilities. There's 16 different possibilities. And so if, let's say, only one child or one daughter plant or whatever is formed, the probability, right, is 1 out of 16, 1/16th fraction for each one of these combinations. All right? So for each combination, there's only a 1/16th chance. So here's what it means, right? Let's suppose the parent on the top and the parent at the side, right? Their gametes combine, right? Right? What is the probability that they're going to have this combination right here? 1 out of 16. Right? You're basically rolling, like, let's say you have a dice that has 16 sides, basically, right? That's basically what you're saying. You have 16 sides, you roll it. It could be any one of these possible combinations.
But how do we know, like, what is going to be, I guess you could say, chosen? So, like, you know how there's dominant and recessive, right? So, like, in this situation, how do you know, like there's 3 recessive and then 1 dominant. So does that mean that whole thing is dominant?
No. So what this is showing, this is just giving you the genetic possibility, right? Now, when it comes to what's actually going to happen, then you look at R and Y separately. So it's not like the capital Y has anything to do with the R, right? So let's take a look at this one here, right? So you see this as lowercase
so this
r.
is just showing the two gametes that are chosen, right?
Right. This is just showing the gametes that are chosen, right? But when it actually manifests, you see the R's, they're acting separately by themselves. They have nothing to do, right? And the Y's are acting separately.
So it's just showing all the possibilities that can happen.
Right. So in this case, you see the capital Y. So the capital Y only dominates over the lowercase y.
Over the lowercase y.
Right.
Yeah, not over the R's.
Yeah, I see.
Not over the R's.
Okay, yeah,
right?
I see.
It doesn't have anything to do with the R's. All right, does that make sense? All right. All right, let me see. So I don't know if... All right, let's do... All right, so... all right, I think the answer is here. I think this is the answer. All right, but let's do this one. All right, so let's do this one. All right, so how about the rest? So the rest we'll make this 2 classes because I think this one there's like a lot more material to explain. So we'll make this into 2 classes. So we'll continue. So let's do this problem. So I'll give you guys 1 minute to do this problem on your paper. This is the dihybrid cross of this genotype: capital X, lowercase x, capital Y, and then the rest we'll do on Thursday. So we'll cut it in half and half for this class.
Wait, what? But I don't understand this question.
So basically, you see this.
What allele combinations would you list on the axis? Okay. So
So we're doing the
No, that
same
makes
thing as the example, and they're giving you.
How many answers should we get? Like 16 or 4?
So it just
oh
depends on
for one
what
parent.
allele combinations.
Oh, okay, a parent, one parent with the genotype.
Hmm. Yeah, this is just for one parent.
Oh, like what are the parents' genotypes?
What are the possibilities that the parent will put into a gamete? That's what it means.
So there should be 16 of them, right?
Uh, no, so this is basically asking you.
No, no, not in this case,
You
not
remember,
16.
you remember this step here?
Oh,
This,
yeah.
you got to figure this
Look,
out.
just make a Punnett square. It's the same thing. I get it now, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, you could use like a Punnett square kind of thing too, right?
Hmm.
I'm
It
gonna
depends. It
just
depends. I think
make a Punnett square.
as long as you understand why, like it's kind of different from a regular Punnett square.
Yeah, I understand that. The dihybrid cross that's showing two different traits or whatever genes that will be chosen. Brother, I'm done. I answered the question.
All right. All right. So Freehow. All right. So how did they get these different combinations here? You see this capital X, capital Y, lowercase x, capital Y. How did they get these combinations? What did we do? So first of all, we're just talking about one parent here. So we're not talking about two parents. Do you remember what we were doing up here? Do you remember this one over here? This is just from one parent right here, right? Okay. Right. So the you see in the square, in the squares, that's the genotype of the parent. Okay. But to the gamete, the parent cannot give all four of these alleles, like capital R, lowercase r, right? At each location, there are R's, it can only pick one. At the Y location, it can only pick one, right? So out of capital R, lowercase r to the gamete, the parent could give either the capital R or the lowercase r, only one of those. And then from the Y's, it can only pick one of these from the Y's. All right. So let's go down here. So over here, can you tell me what possibility could this parent give to the gamete for the X's? What are the different possibilities for the X's here? So look at it. It says genotype. What does it say for the X's? Read what it says here. Hello. All right. What does it say? What is the genotype of the parent here? So yeah. Right. So capital X, lowercase x. So be precise. So okay. So do you, one second. So do you understand? Do you understand what this is? What this question is asking? So this question is asking. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the x's first. Capital X, lowercase x. Right. You understand? There's two alleles, right, for every organism. Right. So let's suppose that parent is producing a gamete through meiosis. Right. Can that parent give both capital X and lowercase x into that gamete? Yes or no? So when the parent produces a gamete, can the parent give both of these x's, capital X and lowercase x, into the gamete? No. So it can only pick one. Do you remember we talked about meiosis? Right. So in meiosis, right? Remember, There's two. Remember, there's two chromosomes, right? Where does a person get two chromosomes from? One from the mother and one from the father, right? So, right. So this creature has capital X and lowercase x. Okay, one came from the mother, one came from the father. Okay. Now, when this parent is producing a gamete for its own child, it cannot give both of those X's to its child. It has to pick one. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so it can only pick one. It can only pick capital X or lowercase x. It picks one. And then from the Y's, it can only pick one. Okay? So let me ask you, first of all, from the Y's, what are going to be the different things that it could pick in terms of capital and lowercase? No, but there's only capital here, right? See that? So this parent has capital Y, right? So it can only pick capital Y. Okay? Okay, so only capital Y is possible. Okay? However, from the X's right over here, right, with each Y, you could either put like a capital X or a lowercase x. So what ends up happening, you could either have capital X. So what are the different combinations, right? You see this, right? These are the different combinations that are possible. So you could have both capital X, capital Y, or lowercase x, capital Y. Okay, so Freya, I want you to go back and watch the lecture on meiosis. All right, because you have to understand this idea of the game. It's like what are we doing? We're not just randomly picking letters. Like why are we picking only one letter from this, right? Because what so at each location, right, there's two chromosomes, right? That's why we have two of the same letter, two X's, two Y's, right? They could be capital, lowercase, whatever, right? But there's two of each version, two of the X versions, two of the Y versions. Where did those come from? Each of those. Why do we have two of those? One from the mother, one from the father. Now, when this parent is going to produce its child, okay, it's not going to send both to its child. It can only pick one. And how does it pick one? Is just rolling of the dice. 50% capital X, 50% lowercase x. Over here, both are going to be capital Y, right? Because both are capital Y in this one, so it can only choose capital Y, right? It doesn't have a lowercase y to choose. Okay. All right. So I want you to. All right. So I want you to watch that lecture again on meiosis, and then I want you to watch and then I want you to watch this one again. So this one is recorded, so I'm gonna upload it. So I want you to watch this one again also, right? But I want you to watch that one again on meiosis. All right. So we'll stop here for today. So Thursday, we're going to begin with here. So we're going to continue with the next topic, or the next slide. So we didn't finish the slides, right? So so I think this is where we stopped. Let's see.
I don't think we stopped there.
No, I think we stopped. This is the next one. So we just did the dihybrid cross thing.
Yeah, we just did the dihybrid cross.
All right. So when we were talking about genetics, right, we were talking about different alleles, right? So we have like the capital letters and the lowercase letters, right? So let's go to Fariha. So Fariha, so what does what's the difference? Like it says over here, like capital R and lowercase r, right? Like why are some letters capital and some letters are not capital? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now take a look at this picture over here, right? So we have at the parent generation we have a red flower and a white flower. All right. So explain to us what's happening in this cross over here, right? Something doesn't look correct, right? According to the typical rules that we talked about before. So what's happening over here? How? Mhm. Right. Right. So when we have like the capital R, would you say the capital R is actually completely dominant?
Yeah, brother. The capital R is completely dominant, brother.
So I'm asking the capital R, is the capital R actually completely dominant here? Right. So if we go to the F1 generation, right? What is the genotype of the F1 generation?
R.
Heterozygous, right? So Yusuf, take a look at the heterozygous capital R, lowercase r. What would you expect to see if the capital R was completely dominant?
I'd expect to see red, brother.
You'll see red, right? But we don't see red, right?
No.
We see pink. So this is basically called incomplete dominance. This is basically when the one that's dominant is not really it's more dominant than the other one. However, it's not really dominant enough. It cannot overpower completely the other recessive alleles.
Mm-hmm.
So the capital R here, right, in the parent generation, right? This one over here is like homozygous dominant, right? So there's two capital R's. So then you see the red. But when you cross it and you end up with capital R lowercase r, the capital R cannot completely dominate over the recessive R white, right?
Does this happen in humans too?
Yeah, this can happen in humans in anything.
Mm.
So this thing over here, right, this is called incomplete dominance, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Now, the next one, right? So F1 is all heterozygous genotype, right? Now, there's another similar kind of idea that's called co-dominant. Okay, so in the previous one, right, we had what's called incomplete dominance. So what happens there is that the next generation, right, like if you have heterozygous, you don't have either the recessive or the dominant trait. It's kind of like halfway in between, right? You see that, right? So the pink flowers are kind of like halfway in between the white and the red. So that's called incomplete dominance. Now this one over here is slightly different. This is called co-dominant. What do you think, Yusuf? What do you think co-dominant means? How do you think that's different than incomplete dominance?
I think codominance is like both things are dominant, but they're not like the same thing. They're like different alleles. Like allele for white flower, red flower, but they're both dominant.
Right. So co-dominance means that both of them show up. Like neither of them kind of waters down the other one, right? So if you have a dominant allele, right, it's basically like kind of taken over and the other one doesn't show up as well. It doesn't show up at all, the recessive one. If you have incomplete dominance, it's kind of like a mix. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a watered down version of either one, right? In co-dominant, right, what you have is that both show up. Both of them exert the same effect as if just one of them was present. So one example of this. The other one, I think the flower color is probably a good example. In terms of codominance, the typical example that they use is blood type. So what is blood type? So blood type is basically you've heard of, like, for example, type A blood, type B, type AB, type O, right?
Mhm.
So what it means is that on the surface of the blood cell, there are certain like these like sugar molecules made out of like sugar, and the different ones that you have, those are called A or B, right? So if you have just A, right?
Mhm.
So you can have either A, B, or you can not have any, which is called O. So if you just have A, that's called type A, because you
Mhm.
have the the sugar, the type of sugar that makes it A, on the surface of your red blood cells. Right.
But brother, so it shows you allele combination, right?
Right, a little combination,
So
right?
the I is capital or not? These are all codominant alleles, right?
So I is basically not A and B basically are dominant over I, right?
Ah,
But A and B are not dominant with regards to each other.
oh,
They are
codominant.
um, they are codominant.
So
Right.
when codominance happens, does that mean both of them exist? It's like this, like how incomplete dominance,
Right.
both of them. This is like codominance is the same thing, right? Both of them
Exactly right.
exist.
Right. So both of them exist. Right. So if you have type A, that means that you just have the A type of sugar. If you have type B, you just have the B type of sugar. If you have type AB, that means that both the A sugar, uh, and the B type of sugar is both present on the surface of the cell, and both of them have an effect when it comes to the immune system. When it comes to, um, you know, like different kinds of reactions. If you get blood transfusions, they both have like the full effect as if only one of them was present.
Mhm.
So let's suppose type A and B are present, right? And you mix it with some kind of blood, and there's a reaction, right?
Mhm.
Because you have the wrong type of blood. If the other allele wasn't present, then you would get the same, you get the same kind of exact reaction. So
Mhm.
neither reaction is like watered down because you have two present, both A and B.
Mhm.
So this is what he means by co-dominant. Like both of them are present and both of them exert their full effect, right? One doesn't like kind of stop or water down the other one. That's kind of what it means, right?
Mhm.
You understand? In the previous one, in the flower color, the idea is that like one is kind of like sort of watering down the effect of the other, right? You don't have like the full red flower,
Uh-huh.
right? So another example of
Wait, brother, can you go back on for 1 second?
mhm.
Why do the allele combinations for the blood type have like two different sets? You know what I mean? Like there can be two
Yeah,
alleles, right?
yeah.
Alleles.
So for example, type A, it
Mhm.
says IA. This means that from the mother and the father, the
Mhm.
person got the A type from both. Okay,
Oh, you got the A type from both. But
right?
so he receives four alleles? Four alleles
No.
for
This is or, right? So IA is one thing. It's not I and A.
well, it's not like
IA,
two alleles.
right? Yeah, that's not two alleles,
Oh, okay.
right? Yeah. So IA is one thing,
Mhm.
IB is one thing, and then
Uh,
just lowercase I is another thing.
blood type O is pretty rare, right?
I don't know the frequency. I guess that's pretty rare.
I don't know. People say blood type O is really rare. Anyways, brother. All right, brother.
All right.
Yeah, cool.
So another kind of example, right, would be, for example, in these flowers. So this is a kind of example where of codominance, where if you have capital R, right, you have red flowers. If you have capital white, you have white flowers. If you have both, then you don't have kind of like a pink overall, right? You don't have total red, total white. Like part of the flower is red and part of the flower is white, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like both are trying to show up. That's kind of
Mhm.
what it means. Like neither of them is kind of watering down the other.
So like if you get like a pink, let's say if you get like a white and red flower, it's not
Mhm.
gonna show up as pink. It's gonna be like both white and red, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of like both white and red.
Like it shows in the picture, right? Like the edges are red and.
Right. Yeah. So this is another example of like codominance. Right?
Hmm.
All right. Now we have something called polygenic traits. So, Freeha, what do you think that means? Polygenic traits. Look at that word, polygenic trait. What do you think that means? Many genes, right? Poly means like many, right? So what this means is that when we were looking at the examples before, there's just like one allele, one place on the chromosome that codes for flower color, or just one place that codes for, the color of the pea plant, something like that, right?
Hmm.
So basically, there's just like one allele, like one location on the chromosome that codes for this one trait, right?
Yeah.
But most things in life are not like that simple. Like, oh, this one place, this one exact thing placed here tells you the color, right?
Oh.
Most traits that people have, or plants have, or animals have, they come from the interaction of many different places on the chromosome. Many different places, they all interact together, and they produce a trait. So skin color is considered to be, one of those examples. Like many different things, create skin color. So there are many different genes all over the place that decide if, a person's skin is going to be white to black and somewhere in the middle, right?
Mhm.
So when you have so many different genes, and every gene could be, one way or the other way, well,
Mhm.
then overall you have this whole range of colors, or whole range of phenotypes. So you're not going to have just like, red versus white, or green versus yellow, right? Like those simple, just two choices when it comes to like the pea plant color and stuff like that. And polygenic traits, right? Because you have so many different genes, and there's all different combinations of genes, you could receive from the parents.
Mhm.
Then here, in terms of the skin color, eye color, height, you have a whole range, a whole spectrum of different heights, for example, right? You don't have just like, just like people who are 6'6" and 5'0". That's it. Just like everyone is one or the other, right? It's a whole range, right? From one end to the other, the whole spectrum, right? You have
Oh.
a whole bunch of people at every single height. So this graph at the bottom kind of shows you that, right? It kind of shows you that if we're measuring the phenotype here on the x-axis, the number of people at every, there's like a whole range all the way from the low end all the way to the high end.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what it means, right? Polygenic trait means that many different genes are coding for something, and so you're going to have like a wide variety of different outcomes.
Mhm.
All right. Now, when it comes to chromosomes, right, we have the autosomes, right? We have the autosomes, which are basically the same for male or female, right? There's not really much of a difference, or there's no difference. Now, when it comes to the X and Y chromosomes, there is a difference, right? So, what does it mean for a person to be a male, or if you have a boy is born, right? What kind of chromosomes are they going to have? Yusuf, like, are they going to have X chromosomes, Y chromosomes? What does it mean if a person is a male? What does that mean?
XY. The first gonna have the 23rd chromosome set.
Right.
One's gonna be X and one's gonna be Y.
Right. So one X, one Y. Male is a one X, one Y. All right. So Freeha, what does it mean if a person is a female? What does that mean? Two X chromosomes, right? So you see in this picture over here, right? So what do you see? You see that, like, it says this, like the sons and the daughters, right? So the sons have XY, right? So the mother, or I mean the daughters, right? They're only gonna have X's. So it depends, right? So for example, the father, right, has X and Y, right? So the father could give the X or could give the Y. You see that?
Huh.
Now the mother has only X's, right? Because obviously females are only X. So the mother can only give an X. So the son and daughter will both receive one of those two X's randomly. But whichever one she gives is still going to be only the X chromosome, right? Because she doesn't have a Y chromosome to give. So if the mother gives an X chromosome and the father also randomly, right? Remember, it's 50% chance. If the father also gives an X chromosome, it's going to be XX, and the baby is going to be a daughter. Now,
Mhm.
if the mother gives the X and the father, again, randomly 50% chance, gives the Y, that means that the offspring is going to be a son. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's suppose this father, has um, the Y chromosome has some kind of problem with it, right? There's a Y-linked disease. Okay.
Mhm.
The father only has one Y chromosome, right?
Uh-huh.
The other one is an X chromosome. So
Uh-huh.
if the Y chromosome has a problem, if there's a Y-linked disease, then that means that every male, that means that that father is definitely going to have that disease, right? Because look, if you have two, usually you have two chromosomes, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's a problem with one, the other one still might have the good allele and might dominate over the diseased one, the problem
Uh-huh.
one, right? But if there's a Y-linked disease, that means every single male is going to have that disease because there's
Mhm.
nothing to balance it out. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Fariha, let's suppose the father has a Y-linked disease, right? There's something on the Y chromosome that's a problem. All right. So now the mother and father, they have some children, right? Some sons and some daughters. All right. How many of the daughters are going to have that disease? What percentage of the daughters will have that disease? Zero. And why? Exactly, right? So you automatically know that the daughter is not going to have the disease, right? So now, how many of the sons are going to have the disease? All of them. And why? What's your reasoning for that? Mhm. Right. So all those sons received that exact copy of the Y chromosome, right? There's no other place you can see here that the sons could have gotten the Y chromosome. So there's a problem with it. All the sons are going to have the problem, and none of the daughters are going to have the problem. Does that make sense? All right.
Yes.
All right. So let's take a look at the X chromosome. I forgot which picture it was. Let's see. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the X chromosome. So let's suppose there's a problem with the X chromosome. All right. So let's suppose let's suppose the mother, all right, has or okay, let's suppose there's a problem with the X chromosome, right? Now let's suppose the father on his X chromosome has a problem, right? Is there anything to balance out that X chromosome's problem, Yusuf?
Yes, brother. There is something to balance it out because if the mother is not affected,
Mhm.
then like her allele could balance out whatever that chromosome is or that trait is.
Okay, right. But I'm talking about the father, right? Let's suppose the father on his X chromosome has some kind of problem, some kind of disease allele, right?
Okay, no, then he himself cannot balance that out
Okay,
because
good,
his.
okay, good, right, good, correct. So the father himself, right, is going to have the disease, right?
Mhm.
Now let's suppose the mother, on one of her X chromosomes, has the diseased allele, right? Is the mother going to have that disease?
Uh, yeah, she will.
She could, right? It depends, right?
Depends on whichever one is dominant. Yeah, but.
Right, good, right. So now, if the father on his X chromosome has like a problem, the diseased allele, right? Automatically, we know that the father is going to have that disease, right? Because the Y chromosome, that's different from the X chromosome, right? So there's nothing to balance out the X chromosome with like a good allele on the other X chromosome, right? Now on the mother, it's going to depend, right? Let's suppose this is a recessive disease allele, right? If the other X chromosome is good, then the mother is also going to be good, right? The mother is also going to be good. However, she's going to be known as a carrier. All right, Freya, why do you think that is? What does that mean that she's a carrier? Possibility. All right, Yusuf, what do you think? What does it mean that that the mother is a carrier? Let's suppose this is a recessive
If
disease
she
allele.
has offspring
Mm-hmm.
and she passes on that allele to her child, then basically she could pass on the disease to her child.
Right. So carrier mean. So what is a carrier? A carrier means that you yourself don't have the disease, right?
They could pass it to others.
But to the children they could get it, right? Depending on what the father is and so on and so forth,
Uh-huh.
right? The child could have the disease, right? So
Okay.
let's look at the different combinations that are present here, right? So now let's suppose this disease allele, on the X chromosome is dominant. Then there's no such thing as a carrier because if you have it, doesn't matter if you have one or two copies, you're gonna have the disease, right?
Mm.
But if it's recessive, then the mother, right? If the mother has only one of those copies, it's possible that she's just a carrier, right? All right, but let's suppose she's a
Wait, brother, can you say that again? So you're saying if she has a dominant allele that's disease, right?
Mhm.
If she passes that on, will the child also get it no matter what? No,
Right.
right?
Uh, so if it's dominant, then the mother is gonna exhibit the symptoms, right?
Yeah, but like say the father has the X chrome. Oh no, wait, they're both gonna give one allele, right? So
Right. Let's suppose the mother has a dominant, diseased allele, right? So it depends, right? Again, there's a 50% chance of which chromosome she's going to give.
huh.
So 50% of the time she's going to give the diseased X chromosome.
Oh,
50% of the time she's going to give
also
the
give
good
the
X
recessive.
chromosome. So it
You could
depends
also
on which one you get. 50%, 50%.
but she could also give the recessive chromosome, right?
Right. She could also give the recessive chromosome as well. Now let's take a look at this example where you have an X linked trait or X linked disease or whatever, and let's suppose the mother. You see the white one, this white square that shows the diseased allele, right? Now it's not dominant though, so the other good one, the blue one, is overpowering it in the mother. So the mother is a carrier, right? She doesn't have the symptoms of the disease, but she could give it to the child, right? So let's take a look at this male child over here, right? So this male child over here received the father's X chromosome, no, received the father's Y chromosome and the good chromosome from the mother, right? So X and Y. So this child is not affected, right? Now this female child over here, right, received the good X chromosome from the X chromosome from the father and the good X chromosome from the mother. So this female child has no disease, not a carrier. This female child over here, right? Freya, can you explain to me what's going on with this female child over here? So assume this is a recessive trait. Does this child is she gonna show the symptoms of the disease? No, she's gonna be a carrier, right? Now this male child, Yusuf, explain what's going on with this male child over here.
The male child is affected because he received the X chromosome from the mother and the Y chromosome from the father, but the chromosome that he received from the mother is affected,
Mm-hmm.
and the Y chromosome can't balance that out because it's different. It's a
Right,
different chromosome.
exactly, right. So in this case, the Y chromosome cannot balance it out, right? So the female child, right, who got it, she's got the other X chromosome, the good X chromosome from the father. So she's just a carrier. But the male child, right, there's nothing to balance it out. So this child is going to be affected, right?
But say you do get a good chromosome and one bad chromosome, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a carrier, right? You can also be affected, but it
Right.
depends on the dominance or.
Exactly, right. So if this was a dominant disease, then this female child wouldn't be a carrier. She herself would be affected,
Mhm.
right? In this case, we're calling this child a carrier because we're assuming that this is a recessive trait. But if this was dominant, even if you got one copy, you're going to be affected.
Mm.
Right. So you see, this says X and Y, right? So the X was the bad X chromosome from the mother, and the Y was from the father. But remember, the Y is different from the X, right? They don't have the same genes on them. So the Y chromosome cannot compensate for the bad X chromosome. Right. All right. So let's go to this over here is showing some examples of X-linked traits. Right. So for example, color blindness. Color blindness can be from a variety of different things, but X-linked trait is an example. Hemophilia, right? Anyone heard of hemophilia? Anyone know what hemophilia is?
No, I've never heard of it. I
So
mean,
he
I've heard of it. I don't know where it is.
so this is like a blood clotting disorder. That means that like if a person gets a bruise, right? That means that they could just start bleeding right away. They could just start bleeding all over the place. So normally if you like hit your hand or something, right? You cause like microscopic kinds of damage, right? You cause like a little bit of damage,
Yeah.
but your blood can clot and stop any kind of bleeding anywhere, right? So that nothing really happens. But in hemophilia, right? If a person gets like a little bit of an injury, if they fall down, anything like that, they could just start spontaneously bleeding somewhere into a joint in their skin, random places. The person could just start bleeding.
Ah.
And then you have muscular dystrophy where the muscles they're not working properly. So these are just different kinds of diseases and problems which are X-linked diseases. Right? Now, this is called a pedigree, right? This picture over here. The pedigree, what it does is it shows like a family tree, right? It's basically a family tree.
Hmm.
So all the circles represent females and all of the squares represent the male, right? So over here, so this father in the square and this mother, right? They have like these three children, for example, these two children, right?
Mm.
And then this male child over here, married this female over here, and now these are their four children, right? So this is basically showing like the mother, the parents, child, stuff like that. So the squares are the father, is the male. Squares are male. The circles are female, right? Now some of these are colored, right? Some of these are empty, and some of these are colored in, right? So the ones that are empty, like so, whatever particular trait you're trying to track or disease you're trying to track, if it's empty, that means that person, like for example here, doesn't have that disease. If it's filled in, right? Like you see, this square here is colored in, this square here is colored in. That represents that person has the disease or has the trait. So for example here, you notice at the top, neither of these parents have this disease, right? Because neither of those are colored in. See that?
Mm-hmm.
However, they obviously had some kind of hidden trait in one of their chromosomes, right?
Because one of the child has the disease.
Because one of the child has a disease. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see the next that this child also has the disease. Now, can anyone take a look at this and kind of guess, like, not for sure, but like possibly what what kind of disease could this be? Do you guys think that this is a problem in the autosomal DNA, in the X chromosome, or the Y chromosome? Any ideas? Any guesses as to,
The colored in?
Mhm.
What?
Yeah,
That's
right.
what
So what kind of disease is this? Is this an X-linked disease, Y-linked disease, or just from the regular chromosomes? What kind of disease do you think this could be?
it
The
could be
typical-
it could be a Weiling disease.
X-linked?
It's the boy, right?
All right. So why? So Yusuf, why do you think this is a Y-linked disease?
Because the boy is being affected, so that means that his Y chromosome, the one here is no wait, no, father. No, it's an X chromosome. It's probably an X chromosome because the Y basically can't be like have any issues because then the father would be experiencing symptoms because there's nothing to cancel it out, and the mother's she could whichever she probably passed on her recessive allele to the boy, so he's experiencing symptoms because there's nothing to cancel it out for
Okay.
him.
All right.
The
So
X chromosome.
all right. So Freeha, what is your explanation? So why do you think this is an X-linked chromosome? Yeah. The circles are the circle is the female, the square is the male. Y-linked, right? So actually, I think you guys both switched, right? So he was Y. He said Y originally, and then he switched to X. So it cannot. So here's what we know. We know that it cannot be the Y-linked trait, right? So what is the reason for that? Because you take a look at this one over here, right?
It's a trick, but once you realize it, then you understand.
Right. Right. So all the sons would have it, and the father, this person's father would also have had it, right? Because this person would have received the Y from the father. So this is probably an X-linked kind of trait. Now, one of the clues that it's an X or Y linked trait is that if you look at a tree, it's mostly the males who have the disease. All right, Yusuf, why do you think that has something to do with, like how do we know based on that that's a clue that probably this is like an X or Y linked kind of trait, if only the males have it?
Because since it's an extra Y link, since the males have it, that means that from the extra Y chromosomes, like basically for them, it's kind of vulnerable in that part where they can't cancel either one out.
Right, exactly,
So
right. So it could be Y or X because you just have one of each, right? So the females, they could just be carriers, but if the male has just one copy, that's it, they have the disease. So if you see it like a pedigree and it's mostly males, it's almost certainly going to be like an X or Y linked trait. Now in this case, right, we know it's not Y linked because like otherwise the father would have had it and the children, the boys would have had it in the children. So this is probably an X linked kind of trait. Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense, brother.
All right. Let's take a look over here. Genotype family member 1. All right, so we'll try. All right, we'll try this one. All right, so take a look at this one. I'll give you guys like 1 minute, maybe like one. I'll give you guys like 1 or 2 minutes, like 2 minutes. I'll give you guys 2 minutes to try and answer this question. Right, so they give you a pedigree. All right, so it says here, what is the genotype of family member 1 in generation 1? So the top row is basically like generation 1. You can say the top row is generation 1, next row generation 2, next row generation 3, like that. And then they have the members in each generation. So generation 1, number 1 would be like this person over here. Generation 2, number 3 would be like this person over here. All right? So I'll give you guys like 2 minutes to try and answer this question here.
Uh, Brother, for this, so like to write the genotype, right? I have a question. So the genotype would just be the two alleles that the parent possesses or the person possesses.
Yeah, right. The genotype is the two alleles, right?
So like for the father, it could be attached and non-attached alleles. Okay.
Right. I'll give you guys like 1 more minute.
All right, brother. I think I'm done.
All right. So before we ask for the answers, all right. So we have person 1 and 2 in this first generation, right? Person 1 and 2. All right. So Yusuf, which numbers over here are their children of person 1 and 2?
1, 2 and 3.
2 and 3, right? So not 1 and 4, just to avoid confusion, right? So 1 and 4. So like person 1 here married person 2, and person 4 here married person 3. That's what that means, right? So person 1 and person 4, right? They're from somewhere else. So we don't know, right? So so their their genotype did not, has nothing to do with these parents over here, right? All right, so let's take a look. So we know that this is a recessive trait, right? That's the clue that they gave us. So this is a recessive trait. All right.
Oh,
So-
I didn't read that. Oh no, brother.
All right, read that. All right. So they're saying that this is a recessive trait, right? So based on this information, all right, let's go to genotype
I
of,
still know.
family member 1 in generation 1. So we go to generation 1, family member number 1. All right. So Yusuf, what is going to be? Okay. Let's use the letter R. So we can use capital R, lowercase r, right?
Okay, I was using E. All right, brother.
E.
So
So 1.
for family member 1 in generation 2, brother, the
Also, it says generation 1. First, family member 1 in generation 1. That's the first one.
okay, he would most likely, all right, always possibly something else, brother. But I'm just saying, all right.
Mhm.
Both of his alleles would be recessive, so it'd be lowercase r, lowercase r.
Right. So if we know that this person is affected and they're recessive, this is a recessive trait. Both have to be like lowercase r, right? There's no capitals in there. Lowercase r, lowercase r. What do you think for this parent over here? Number 2, Yusuf.
Same thing, brother.
Same thing, right? So they're both affected. So both are going to be basically the same thing. Lowercase r, lowercase r. All right, let's go to Friha. So family member 1 in generation 2. So let's go to generation 2, the second line. Family member number 1. So Friha, what do you think is going to be this person's genotype? Homozygous. Do you think it's going to be capital R, lowercase r, or capital R, lowercase r? Capital R, right? So let's suppose this person was capital R, right?
It'd be codominance, brother.
Not codominant. So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying suppose this person is capital R. Okay.
Hmm.
All right, Friha. What kind of allele would they give to their children? Right. Right. This is the male. The square is the male. Right. So if this person, remember this is a recessive trait, right? So if this person gave, had capital R,
He would give one capital no matter what.
right, to their children, which are down here,
So then they wouldn't be affected.
they would automatically give only the capital R, right?
Hmm.
But
So
in
then
that
the children would be affected.
but it was right. So this person, right? So you see how when 1 and 2 have their children, like some of their children have the disease, right? That means that in that 1 is a carrier. That means that there's a capital R, but there's a lowercase r hidden in there, right? Because if this was just capital R, all the children would get that capital R, and none of them would have the disease. Does that make sense? All right. So this one here, has to be heterozygous. Has to be capital R, but there's a hidden lowercase r in there as well. All right. Let's go to family member 4 in generation 2. So Yusuf, family member 4, generation 2.
Family member 4 of generation 2. Hold up. This is a trick one, brother. No. Hold up. All right. So the family member of generation 2, most likely, brother. Family member 4 has both capital
Right.
because
So
none of
both
them are receiving anything.
right. So this one is gonna be both capital. So Freeha, why do you think you said that both are capital in family member 4? Mm-hmm.
But
Right. So you take a look at their children. They have they have like a lot of children, and none of them have the disease.
but brother, it is still possible. It is still
Right.
possible. There's still a chance that
Right. So
they're
it is
not,
right. So it is still possible,
because
but mhm.
see the last one, the final generation, it has it's affected. But we're not 100% sure 100%
All right.
sure if
All
it's.
right. Hold on. Hold on. Let's get to that. Right. So here, first of all, you understand like so most likely, right? Just based on this, right? That if you have this many children and none of them are affected, probably 4 does not have is not a carrier.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
understand? You
probably.
understand, right? All right. Now
Yeah.
let's go down. Let's go down here, right?
Mhm.
So you're saying that it's possible it could be dominant, right?
Yes,
So
there's a
so
possibility.
here's probably why it's not dominant. Look at 4, 5, and 1. Look at 4, 5, and 1. Based on this right here, how
Mhm.
do we know that most likely is not this is not a dominant trait?
Wait, what do you mean it's not a dominant trait? I know it's a recessive trait, but
Right. Right, but you were saying it's still possible that it could be a dominant trait, right?
no, I'm saying it's possible that the second generation, the like 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying 4 could possibly be a carrier is what I'm saying, right? Because like it's like it's probable that like 4 just passed on every single time it's recessive. I'm sorry, it's dominant
Oh,
allele.
I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you're okay. Yeah. So 4 could be a carrier, but probably not with this many children. Probably not. That's what you're saying.
probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right.
But it's
Okay.
still possible, right?
Right. All right. So family member 5 of generation 3. So this one right here, family member 5 of generation 3. All right, Yusuf, what do you think? This one right here.
Family member 5, generation 3. It is most likely recessive allele, so it'd be lowercase lowercase e. But it is possible.
Check again. So if this person is
Oh wait,
lowercase
sorry, never. It can only be lowercase lowercase e.
for number 5.
Sorry, not lower. I'm not saying whether. I mean, uh, uh, uppercase e, lowercase e. I mean,
All right. So number 5 is a carrier, probably heterozygous, like capital R, lowercase
mm,
r, right? Why?
mm,
Because it appears in their child, right? When 4 and
mm,
5 have a child, it appears,
mm.
right? So probably hidden within 5, there's a recessive allele, and then hidden within 4, there's also a recessive allele. You see that?
Mm.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll stop there for the